Hello everyone. So today I wanted to talk just briefly about the situation in Afghanistan in relation to cricket. Now, people outside of cricket may not be aware that Afghanistan really took on cricket in the wake of 9/11 and the subsequent US invasion of their country, of Afghanistan. So they'd never really played cricket seriously before that, and even during the invasion, mid-invasion, they started playing cricket. It was uh, British soldiers that were teaching the people to play it. And Afghanistan's right next to Pakistan and the subcontinent and all these countries that love cricket like with a passion. It's their number one favourite sport. And so pretty quickly after that, Afghanistan became this, well, not exactly a powerhouse, but a couple of years ago they were granted test status. They're ranked in the top 10 in the world in ODI and T20. So they were equal with Ireland. They were the 11th and 12th test nations. So pretty big deal, and they're getting stronger and stronger and all that. And so what has happened? So with the Taliban, one of the Taliban ministers, I guess is the word, and we're not sure exactly how high up he is. He was asked in an interview. He said, "Oh, so." They asked, "Will women be playing cricket in Afghanistan?" And he said, "No, I don't see how they would, because it's against Islamic law for them to expose face covering or their body, and that might happen in the middle of playing a game of cricket." Now that was the answer, and based on that answer, Cricket Australia, so the people in charge of cricket in Australia, said that the upcoming tour, so Afghanistan were going to come to Australia, go to Hobart and play a test match there, that's probably going to be cancelled. The thing is, this was not an official statement. So the Taliban haven't come out there and said, we're banning cricket for women. In fact, they haven't officially made a stance about, well, anything really. They're still sort of getting their head around things. A lot of people have made assumptions. There's been an assumption about that women won't be able to teach anything because there's a lot of female teachers in university and in other things, and a lot of them have left the country. Now that may well be true, but they haven't actually decided that yet. And there's big protests in the streets, and look, it may well be that we'll go to that situation. I know that there have been segregated classes with men and women, or boys and girls, separated by a curtain in Afghanistan classes. So they don't look at each other. But the other thing is that cricket, Afghanistan has never had a women's cricket team. Last year there were attempts made to start one. They started having contracts and getting women together who played the sport domestically. So they don't actually even have a team and have never been ranked. So it's a bit of a moot point in a lot of ways. It's certainly not about, it's not like they had this world-beating team or this really powerful team that suddenly aren't allowed to play. No, they've actually never had a team. In fact, they were given test status without a team, without a structure, without anything, because they were given test status in the men's version. In a lot of ways, this is politics. Now, I checked for what's the real reason for it, and one thing I noticed was that Taliban were asked about the Australians who died in Afghanistan fighting. So there were 41, I think, 41 or maybe 47 Australian soldiers that died in Afghanistan. And the Taliban said, well, they all deserve to die, and in fact, we'd like to kill more of them. Essentially a death threat. And that happened in the same sentence, the same interview, as the bit about women's cricket. And essentially, I think that the real reason, which unfortunately, and I think Cricket Australia could have said the real reason in this case. I don't think there was a reason to lie about it. But the real reason, I think, is that it is a serious terrorist threat. Australia has a lot of Afghans living here. We've had Afghanistan nationals living here since, I think, 1850. Might have even been 1830. So a very long time, 170 years, 190 years, that sort of level. And even without having people come here, the presence of the cricket team could incite terrorism, and that's could have people die, and that's a very valid reason to ban the tour. Unfortunately, I think that we've involved women's cricket in this when it really doesn't have anything to do with it. And it's because Cricket Australia have taken the line of deciding that this was an official statement when it wasn't, and because they've therefore made all these assumptions. I think we're put into that difficult situation. I would have rather it if the Cricket Australia said, "Oh, well, actually, we have security fears of them coming here because we're concerned about terrorism," which was a similar situation when we had Sri Lanka with the Tamils, with Matthaiyi Muralidharan being a Tamil, even though he was an Indian Tamil, and that's different. That there were terrorist threats in Australia when Sri Lanka was coming. Now, we managed to deal with that. We did have threats on people's lives, and I think that was 1996. And we managed to get through that. But, if perhaps we're not prepared to go through that this time around, I think that's probably fair enough. And, the Taliban have made direct threats towards Australians, essentially, by saying that kind of thing, saying, well, Australians deserve to die. But then they said, oh, well, we support the Afghanistan cricket team going ahead with the tour to Australia. It's a bit of a difficult situation there because obviously we can't put Australian crowds, and we may well be having crowds because they will be playing in Hobart, which has no COVID-19 cases, and are allowed to have crowds. And so it will be putting people who would potentially go to the match, putting their lives in jeopardy. I mean, we could have a bomb, or we could have all sorts of different things there, and it's very risky. And that's the thing that, we're probably not prepared to take that risk. As for the women's cricket team, I mean, this is the thing. If the Taliban turned around and said, well, actually, we've never had a cricket team for women, but we're prepared to get one, will Cricket Australia then say, oh, sure, let's go ahead with the tour? Because of the terrorist threats, they actually shouldn't. But they've sort of backed themselves in that corner. So all that Taliban have to do is to make an official statement along those lines, and then we're good. But of course, Cricket Australia have also said they're welcoming Afghan cricketers, but just not under the Taliban flag. So they're giving these mixed signals. So on one hand, they're saying, well, we don't want them to come until the Taliban says that women's cricket is going to happen, even though it's never happened before. And on the other hand, they're saying, well, we're welcoming players, just not the Taliban. So what are they saying? What's their ultimatum? They're not even being clear on what their ultimatum is. And then they're saying to ICC to ban them and all sorts of stuff. I mean, we do actually have a history of being political with cricket. We banned South Africa for political reasons because of apartheid. Of course, they were banned in just about every sport. We also banned Zimbabwe. I can't remember the precise details, but I think it was to do with the murdering of white farmers. I'm not quite sure exactly what it was, but we also haven't let Pakistan host matches. Of course, that was for safety reasons. For a little while, we didn't let India didn't let itself run the IPL. And of course, Afghanistan have never hosted any matches for security reasons. So there has been politics there. And of course, during the 1996 World Cup, we didn't go to Sri Lanka because of terrorist fears. A number of countries refused to tour and effectively handed the World Cup trophy to Sri Lanka for political reasons. And there were those black armband protests in the World Cup. I can't remember which one that was. I think that was 96 as well. And for the death of cricket in South Africa. So there's always been a bit of politics. And so this is not outside of what cricket often does with politics. So what is the right thing to do? I would hope that the Taliban will do the right thing, and that is to say, look, we will actually allow women's cricket. And I think that would prove that they're going to be this moderate group that they've promised they'd be. If that's what they'll do, good. And if I was the Taliban, I would say, sure, go ahead with it. It's not a big price to take. It's not a big price to pay, I should say. And they should do it. But whether the Taliban are sensible enough to do that, I can't guarantee. They might not be that smart. They might be like, oh, we've got to uphold our Islamic thing. but whether that's enough to let the tour go ahead, I don't know. And I guess that's the danger. Cricket Australia are just putting a very big political stance on this, and I think that because they've been dishonest, pretending it was about one thing, it was actually about something else. It's made it easier for the Taliban to do the wrong thing, and that's unfortunate. I wish that they just said this is about terrorism and never mentioned women's cricket, because this was never about women's cricket. And unfortunately pretended it is, and they shouldn't be doing that. Anyway, that's it from me. Bye bye.